I threw my favorite dress in the trash today. It wasn't because it was old, and it wasn't because it didn't fit. It was because the man I love, the man I'm supposed to grow old with, had spent the last 2 years convincing me that wearing it made me look dead. How does a person get to a point where they willingly destroy the things they love just to stop the bleeding of their own self-esteem? How did I go from a girl who loved the sun, who laughed until her sides ached, to a woman who hides in a darkened living room, literally counting down the days until her next period, just so she can brace for the physical pain and the emotional pressure? They say marriage is a partnership, a sanctuary, but what do you do when the person who is supposed to cherish you is the one slowly extinguishing your light? I'm standing at the edge of a decision that will change my life forever, and I need you to tell me if I'm losing my mind or if I'm finally waking up from a 2-year nightmare. I'm sitting here in a house that feels more like a waiting room than a home. It's quiet, but it's not a peaceful kind of quiet. It's the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air is made of lead. I've been married for 2 years, and if you had told the version of me from 3 years ago that I'd be sitting here, staring at a mountain of dishes and wondering if I have the right to leave, I wouldn't have believed you. I used to be so certain. I used to be vibrant, but lately when I look in the mirror, I don't recognize the woman looking back. Her eyes are dull. Her smile, the one everyone used to comment on, is just gone. I think the hardest part is the slow fade. It's not like I woke up one day and everything was terrible. It was a gradual erosion. It started with the small things I told myself were just growing pains of a new marriage. Like the dishes. We don't have a dishwasher. That sounds like a small, trivial complaint, doesn't it? But in this house, it's a monument to how little my time matters. When we first moved in, I suggested we get one. It would save time, it would be efficient, but my husband shut it down immediately. He told me that the women in his family always wash dishes by hand. He said it with this shrug, like it was a beautiful tradition rather than a grueling chore. He told me it wasn't a big deal, and because I wanted to be a good wife, I listened. So now, every single day, I stand at that sink. I scrub the grease from the pans and the dried sauce from the plates until my knuckles are raw and the skin on my fingers is puckered and white. It's not just about the plates. It's about the fact that he watches me do it and sees no issue with it. He won't help, because in his mind, this is woman's work. It's a recurring theme in our life. What his family did, what his culture dictates, and how I'm constantly failing to measure up to those invisible standards. He does cook, I'll give him that. About half the time he's in the kitchen. But even his contribution feels like a weapon. He mostly makes dishes from his home country. Complex, labour-intensive meals that he knows I don't know how to replicate perfectly. And instead of teaching me with love, or being happy to share his culture, he uses it as a way to guilt me. He'll sigh over a steaming pot and tell me how much he has to suffer because he has to do the cooking himself. He makes it sound like he's a martyr for wanting to eat the food he grew up with. I have to do this because you can't make it properly, he'll say. It's a constant reminder that I am less than. I'm not the cook his mother was. I'm not the woman his sisters are. When I do try to cook, the atmosphere in the kitchen shifts from domestic to a high-stakes interrogation. He doesn't just sit in a living room and wait for the meal. No, he hovers. He stands just over my shoulder, watching the way I move, the way I hold the knife, the way I season the food. It's suffocating. I remember one Tuesday, such a normal, boring day, where I was just trying to chop an onion for a stew. I was tired, my head was aching, and I just wanted to get dinner on the table. He stood there, his shadow falling over the cutting board, and he just snapped. He got angry, truly angry, because I wasn't cutting the onion the right way. To him, the size of the dice was a personal affront. It wasn't about the onion. It was about control. It was about making sure I knew that even in my own kitchen, even in a task I was doing for him, I was doing it wrong. The only chore I ever asked him to handle, the one single thing, was the garbage. I told him early on, I'll handle the cleaning, the laundry, the endless hand-washing of dishes, but can you please just be responsible for the trash? He agreed. But he doesn't do it. Not consistently anyway. The bags pile up. They sit in the hallway, the smell of rotting leftovers and waste beginning to permeate the house. I see it every time I walk past. It's an eyesore and a literal stench. And the kicker? He's the one who complains about it. He'll walk through the hall, see the bags he neglected, and huff about how the garbage is piling up. You're probably wondering, why don't you just take it out yourself? Believe me, I've tried. I've reached for the bag 100 times just to get it out of my sight. But the moment I touch it, he insists he'll do it. He tells me he doesn't like me doing it. He stakes his manhood on this one task, yet he refuses to actually perform the task. So I'm left in this purgatory of filth, waiting for him to decide that today is the day he'll finally walk 20 feet to the bin outside. It's like he wants the credit for being the kind of man who takes out the trash, without actually having to be that man. And then there's the food itself. I've learned to walk on eggshells around the dinner table. If I make something and a single ingredient is slightly off, or if the texture isn't exactly what he envisioned, he'll just stop eating. He'll push the plate away with this look of pure disgust and declare that the food is wasted. Do you know what that does to a person? To spend an hour over a hot stove, pouring your effort into something to nourish your partner, only to have it treated like trash because it wasn't perfect. I've started to lose my appetite entirely. Eating has stopped being about nourishment or pleasure and has become about performance. Will he like it? Will he get angry? Will I be corrected tonight? I feel like I'm disappearing. I spend so much time analysing his moods, trying to anticipate his critiques and managing his expectations that there's nothing left of me at the end of the day. I'm just a shell that washes dishes and cuts onions wrong. I look back at photos of myself from 2 years ago and I see a girl who had a light in her eyes. Now, I just see a woman who is tired, so incredibly tired. And the worst part is, I'm starting to think this is just my life now, that I don't have a right to ask for more. But then the cramps start, and the cycle of pain begins all over again, and I realize how truly alone I am in this marriage. The pain always starts as a dull, heavy thrumming in my lower back, a warning bell that my body is about to become a battlefield. I have PCOS, and for those who don't know, it's not just cramps. It's a systemic, grueling experience that feels like someone is twisting my internal organs with rusty pliers. There are days when the world goes blurry because the pain is so sharp it triggers a cold sweat. There are days when I can barely stand up straight, where every step feels like I'm walking through deep, thick mud while someone kicks me in the stomach. In those moments, when I'm at my most vulnerable, you'd think the person who promised to love and cherish me would be there with a glass of water, a warm blanket, or just a kind word. But in this house, my pain is treated like an inconvenience. It's an affront to the normal operation of the home. When my cycle hits, the atmosphere in the house shifts from cold to freezing. He doesn't have to say a word for me to feel his resentment. It's in the way he sighs when he walks into the kitchen and sees that I haven't started dinner yet. It's in the heavy, deliberate way he sets his keys on the table, a silent protest against the fact that I'm lying on the sofa instead of scrubbing the floors. He looks at me not with concern, but with a clinical sort of disappointment, as if I'm a piece of machinery that has suddenly broken down and is failing to perform its primary function. I remember one night vividly. The pain was so intense I was curled in a fetal position, tears streaming down my face, clutching my stomach. My heating pouch, the only thing that brings me even a modicum of relief, was sitting on the kitchen counter, cold. I just needed him to walk the 10 feet to the kitchen, pop it in the microwave for 2 minutes, and bring it back to me. That was it. I didn't need a miracle. I just needed 2 minutes of his time. I asked him, my voice cracking, "Could you please heat up my pouch? And maybe a cup of tea?" He looked at me, paused, and then just didn't. He didn't say no, but he didn't move. He stayed glued to his phone, his face illuminated by the blue light of the screen, completely indifferent to the fact that his wife was sobbing in pain 3 feet away. I waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. Eventually, I realized he wasn't coming. I had to use the coffee table to pull myself up, my legs shaking, and slowly, agonizingly, shuffle my way to the kitchen. I stood there, leaning against the cold granite of the counter, waiting for the microwave to beep, feeling a level of loneliness I didn't know was possible. I broke down that night. I really broke down. I sat on the edge of the bed and told him through gasping breaths how much it hurt. Not just the PCOS, but the fact that he wouldn't help me. I told him I felt invisible. I told him I just wanted to feel cared for. And do you know what happened? Somehow, within 5 minutes, the entire conversation became about him. Suddenly, I was the one attacking him. I was the one being unfair by pointing out his lack of effort. He managed to twist my plea for a heating pad into a lecture about how stressed he was and how my negativity was ruining his evening. I stopped asking after that. I just stopped. Now, when the pain comes, I go into survival mode. I do the chores until I literally can't stand, and then I hide my tears so I don't have to deal with his mood. But the physical pain of the PCOS isn't even the hardest part. There's a deeper, more private humiliation that comes with my period in this house. He expects sex. It doesn't matter if I'm bleeding. It doesn't matter if I'm nauseous. It doesn't matter if I feel like my insides are being shredded. He expects it. And the pressure, it's constant. It's not a violent demand, but it's a persistent, wearing down kind of pressure that makes me feel like my body doesn't actually belong to me. It's a duty. I've started to develop this visceral, physical reaction to the calendar. When I see that my period is a few days away, a knot of pure anxiety forms in my stomach. I feel sick to my soul. I know what's coming. The physical agony, the mountain of chores I'm still expected to climb, and the emotional weight of having to perform intimacy when I'm at my weakest. I feel like a ghost inhabiting a body that is being used by everyone but me. And where would I go anyway? For the longest time, I was literally trapped. We live in an area with no public transport, no buses, no trains, nothing but long stretches of road that lead to nowhere if you don't have a car. For the first year of our marriage, he didn't have a license. We were stuck. But then, last year, he finally got his license and a car. He looked me in the eye and promised things would change. "I'll take you out 2 or 3 times a week," he said. "We'll go see things. You won't be stuck inside anymore." I believed him. I really did. I spent weeks imagining the feeling of the sun on my face, the wind in my hair, the simple joy of being somewhere, anywhere that wasn't these 4 walls. But the car didn't bring freedom. It just brought a different kind of cage. The outings he promised rarely happen, and when they do, they're not what I dreamed of. I want to walk. I want to go to a park or a botanical garden, or just a sidewalk in a busy part of town where I can feel like I'm part of the world again. I want to be in the fresh air during the day, but he almost exclusively takes me out at night. We drive in silence, the headlights cutting through the dark, and we just sit in the car. We'll park somewhere, and he'll stare out the window or look at his phone while I sit in the passenger seat, staring at the dashboard, wondering why I'm even here. It's like he's checking a box. Took wife out. Done. When I ask to go for a walk during the day, the response is almost always a gamble. Sometimes he gets angry, his voice rising as he asks why I'm never satisfied with what he does. Other times he'll give me a dismissive, maybe tomorrow, a tomorrow that never actually arrives. And on the rare blue moon occasion that he actually agrees, he makes sure I know exactly how much of a burden I'm being. Take today, for example. I had been begging to go to the beach for days, just to see the ocean, to hear the waves, to feel like the world was bigger than my living room. He finally agreed. But the entire drive there was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Are you sure you want to go? You look really tired, he said, his tone dripping with fake concern. Then, a few minutes later, I thought you didn't really want to go because of the shoes you chose. You're clearly not dressed for a walk. He was trying to get me to cancel. He wanted me to be the one to say, "You're right, let's just go home," so he could be the good guy who tried. But I didn't give in. I stayed silent. I kept my eyes on the horizon. When we finally got there, he didn't even get out of the car. He just sat there, engine idling, and told me to go ahead. So I walked. I walked alone for 2 hours along the shoreline. I watched families playing, dogs running, couples holding hands. I felt the salt spray on my skin, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt like myself again. But the moment I got back into the car, he killed it. He looked at me with this smirk, this condescending half smile, and said, "I don't understand why you always want to walk. It's so boring. It's something depressed grandmas do." In one sentence, he took my one moment of peace and turned it into something pathetic. He took my need for light and air and framed it as a symptom of a mental illness he was mocking. I realized then that he doesn't just want to control where I go. He wants to control how I feel about going there. He wants to make the outside world feel as small and miserable as the world he's built for me inside. It's funny how the people who are supposed to love you the most can become the loudest voices in your head, the ones that tell you you're not enough, or that you're too much, or that you're just wrong. It's not just the big things, the isolation or the chores. It's the way he looks at me when I'm just trying to feel like myself. It's the way he uses his words like a scalpel, peeling away layers of my confidence until there's nothing left but raw, exposed nerves. I used to love clothes. I didn't have a huge wardrobe, but the pieces I had meant something to me. They were expressions of who I was, bright colours, soft fabrics, things that made me feel pretty and capable. But slowly, over the last 2 years, my closet has become a source of anxiety. Every time I get dressed, I find myself bracing for the honesty he's about to dish out. He calls it honesty. He says he's just being truthful because he cares about me. But truth shouldn't feel like a punch to the gut. If I put on a yellow sweater that I think makes me look cheerful, he'll look at me with this twisted expression and tell me the colour makes me look dead, like I'm some kind of walking corpse. If I wear a skirt that I feel confident in, he'll make a comment about how it makes me look fat or unflattering. The comments aren't always loud. Sometimes they're just little throwaway remarks, muttered under his breath as he walks past me. But they stick. They sit in my mind and fester. I've reached a point where I don't even look in the mirror to see if I like what I'm wearing. I look to see if I can find a reason for him to hate it. I'm trying to preempt his cruelty. There was this one dress. I bought it before we were even engaged. It was a bit of a splurge, expensive, high quality, and it fit me like a second skin. It was this beautiful deep emerald green, and every time I put it on, I felt like the best version of myself. I remember wearing it to a friend's wedding and feeling so full of life. It represented a time when I was happy, when I was independent, when I had a future that felt bright. But from the moment we got married, he targeted that dress. Every single time I pulled it out of the closet, the comments started. "That green is too harsh for your skin. It makes your hips look weird. You're really going to wear that again?" He made it his mission to make me hate it. And God, it worked. Eventually, I couldn't even look at the dress hanging in the closet without feeling a wave of nausea. It didn't represent beauty anymore. It represented his disapproval. It represented the dead girl he kept telling me I was. So, a few weeks ago, I took it off the hanger. I didn't donate it. I didn't give it to a friend. I walked over to the kitchen, the same kitchen where I've spent countless hours scrubbing dishes by hand, and I shoved it into the trash bag. I watched the green silk disappear under the coffee grounds and the scraps of food he refused to eat. I cried while I did it, but it wasn't because I missed the dress. I cried because I realized I was throwing away the last piece of the girl I used to be. I was surrendering. And it's not just my body or my clothes. It's my mind too. Even the way we spend our evenings is a battle I've long since stopped fighting. I love stories. I love getting lost in a good romantic comedy, or a fantasy epic, or even a colourful anime. I love the magic of movies, the way they can make you feel something deep and hopeful. But in this house, the TV belongs to him. Every night it's the same thing. Action movies. Gritty, loud, explosion-heavy movies about SWAT teams, the CIA, or lone wolf assassins. It's all muzzle flashes and deep-voiced men talking about missions. I don't mind those movies once in a while, but it's all we ever watch. If I suggest something else, something with a bit of heart or humour, he treats it like I'm asking him to sit through a root canal. He'll roll his eyes, sigh heavily, and make it clear that he's indulging me, which usually results in him complaining the entire time or falling asleep within 10 minutes, only to wake up and tell me how boring my taste is. So I've stopped suggesting. I sit there night after night, bathed in the blue light of another tactical thriller, feeling the world outside shrinking smaller and smaller. I feel like a ghost in my own living room. I'm physically there, but my presence doesn't matter. My preferences don't matter. My joy doesn't matter. I can feel my spark going out. That's the only way I can describe it. You know that feeling when you're genuinely excited about something? When you wake up and you're glad the day has started? I haven't felt that in so long. I feel like I'm operating on a delay, like my soul is a few seconds behind my body, just trying to keep up. I've lost my smile. I've lost my laughter. Most days I just feel a profound, soul-crushing heaviness that I can't seem to shake. I find myself sitting in the dark sometimes, when he's in the other room, just wondering how I got here. How did I go from a person with opinions and passions to someone who is afraid of a green dress? How did I end up in a marriage where I have to beg for a walk in the sun? I'm starting to realize that this isn't just marriage being hard. This is something else. This is a slow, methodical dismantling of a human being. He isn't hitting me, but he's breaking me. He's taking everything that makes me me and replacing it with his rules, his honesty, and his control. And the most terrifying part is that I'm starting to believe him. I'm starting to believe that I am a depressed grandma for wanting to walk on the beach. I'm starting to believe that I'm unfit because I don't chop onions his way. I'm at a breaking point. I can feel it in my bones. I'm standing at a crossroads, and one path leads to more of this. More years of hand-washing dishes, more years of being ignored in my pain, more years of throwing away the things I love to keep the peace. The other path is terrifying because it's unknown. But for the first time in 2 years, the unknown is starting to look a lot more like freedom than anything I have here. Imagine waking up every single day and realizing that the sun is a stranger to you. It sounds dramatic, doesn't it? Like something out of a gothic novel. But for me, it's just Tuesday. It's Wednesday. It's every day. I live in this house, these 4 walls that I scrub until my fingers bleed, and yet I feel like I'm living in a basement. We live in an area where you need a car for everything. There are no sidewalks here, no bus stops, just winding roads that lead to other houses exactly like mine, filled with people I'll never meet. When he didn't have his license, I felt like a prisoner, but I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that once he could drive, the world would open up. But now he has the car, he has the keys, and the world is still closed. The promise of going out 2 or 3 times a week has turned into a cruel joke. On the rare occasions he actually puts the car in gear with me in the passenger seat, it's usually after dark. He says he's tired from work, or that the sun is too much, or he just makes excuses until the light fades. So we drive. We drive through the darkness, the dashboard lights glowing amber, and we just sit there. He'll pull into a parking lot or a lookout point, and he'll stay in the driver's seat, scrolling through his phone, while I stare out the window at nothing. I just want to feel the grass under my feet. I just want to breathe air that hasn't been recycled through an AC unit. When I try to explain this to him, when I try to tell him that I feel like I'm suffocating, he looks at me like I'm the one who's being irrational. That's when the depressed grandma comments start. He's managed to pathologize my basic human need for nature and movement. He's convinced himself, and he's trying to convince me, that my desire to walk in the sun is a sign of a mental breakdown. It's a brilliant move if you think about it. If he can label my unhappiness as a sickness or a trait of old age, then he doesn't have to take responsibility for the fact that he's the one making me miserable. I think about his family a lot. I've never met them all, but I know them through his stories. The women who wash every dish by hand without a word of complaint. The women who cook perfect traditional meals every single night while balancing a dozen other responsibilities. He uses them like ghosts to haunt me. Every time I fail to meet a standard I never agreed to, he brings them up. My mother wouldn't find this hard, he'll say, or my sisters know how to manage a household. It's a comparison I can never win. I'm not his mother, I'm not his sisters. I'm a woman who grew up with different values, a different life, but he treats my background like it's a defect. He treats my inability to cook his childhood meals perfectly as a personal failure of character. It's not just that I don't know the recipe, it's that I'm making him suffer by not knowing it. He's a grown man who can cook. He does cook, but he does it with such theatre, such performative exhaustion, that I end up feeling guilty for even eating the food he prepares. And then there's the kitchen supervision. I can't even describe the level of anxiety I feel when I hear his footsteps approaching while I'm at the stove. It's like being a student in a class where the teacher is just waiting for you to trip up so they can humiliate you. If I use a different knife than he would, he has something to say. If I stir the pot clockwise instead of counterclockwise, there's a sigh. It's constant. It's relentless. It's gotten to the point where I don't want to cook at all, which of course just feeds into his narrative that I'm lazy or incapable. But the thing that truly haunts me, the thing that I can't seem to get past, is the way he treats my body. I have PCOS. It's a part of me, a difficult, painful part of me. And in a marriage, your partner is supposed to be your teammate when things get tough. But when the cramps start, when the exhaustion hits, he doesn't see a woman in pain. He sees a broken servant. He still expects the house to run. He still expects the laundry to be folded, the floors to be spotless, the hand washing of the dishes to continue. Even if he doesn't say, "Get up and clean," his attitude says it for him. The way he stomps through the house, the way he slams a cupboard door just a little too hard, the way he ignores me when I'm lying on the couch, it's all a language of resentment. He's punishing me for being sick. And the sex. God, the sex. How do you explain to the person you love that your body is screaming in pain, and their response shouldn't be, "But what about me?" It's gotten to where I feel a physical sense of nausea when I realize my period is coming. Not because of the blood or the cramps, but because I know the pressure is coming. I know I'll have to navigate the delicate dance of trying to protect my own body while trying not to upset him. I feel like a commodity. I feel like a piece of furniture that he expects to be available whenever he wants, regardless of whether that furniture is currently on fire. I've spent so much time asking myself if I'm being unfair. I've spent hours on the internet looking up how to be a better wife or how to handle a difficult husband. I've tried to see it from his perspective. Maybe he's stressed. Maybe his culture really is that different. Maybe I am being too sensitive about the honesty regarding my clothes. But then I remember the green dress. I remember the way I felt when I threw it in the trash. That wasn't the action of a woman who was overreacting. That was the action of a woman who was being bullied into hating herself. He says the colour made me look dead. But the truth is, I feel dead. He's spent 2 years telling me I look lifeless, and I'm starting to realise it's because he's the one who's been draining the life out of me. He's like a vampire, but instead of blood, he feeds on my confidence. He feeds on my joy. He feeds on my independence. I look at the trash can in the kitchen, the one he refuses to empty, and I realise that my life has become a collection of things I've thrown away to appease him. My favourite dress, my love for walks in the sun, my taste in movies, my smile, my sense of worth. I've pruned myself down, branch by branch, hoping that if I just became small enough, he'd finally be satisfied. If I just became the perfect, silent, dishwashing, traditional wife he wants, he'd finally love me the way I need to be loved. But I'm smaller than I've ever been, and he's still not happy. He's still suffering. He's still honest about how fat or dead I look. He's still sitting in the car while I walk alone on the beach. I'm starting to see a pattern. It's not about the dishes. It's not about the onions. It's about the fact that as long as I'm trying to please him, he has all the power. And the moment I stop trying, the moment I stand up and say no, that's when the real anger comes out. That's when the depressed grandma comments turn into something sharper. I'm tired. I am so tired. Not just the PCOS tired, but the kind of tired that goes right down into your soul. I'm tired of being a ghost in my own life. I'm tired of waiting for a tomorrow that never comes. And most of all, I'm tired of wondering if I'm the problem. What if I'm not the problem? What if the problem is that I'm married to a man who doesn't actually like me? He likes having a wife. He likes having a clean house. He likes having someone to cook for him and someone to vent his honesty onto. But he doesn't like me. He doesn't like the girl who loves green dresses and fantasy movies and long walks in the sun. And if he doesn't like me, why am I killing myself to stay? Depressed grandma. Those 2 words have been echoing in my head like a death knell since we got back from the beach. Is that what I am now? At 26 years old, am I already a discarded relic? Someone whose simple desire for sunlight and movement is a sign of a decaying mind? I look at my hands as I scrub another pot, by hand, of course, and I wonder if he's right. My skin looks pale and translucent under the harsh kitchen light. Maybe I do look dead. But whose fault is that? I've spent so much time analysing his family's traditions. He talks about the women in his life like they're these mythical creatures of endless endurance and culinary perfection. But I've started to wonder, did they actually love washing dishes by hand for 3 hours a day? Or did they just have husbands who, like mine, made them feel like their worth was tied to the grease under their fingernails? He uses his culture like a shield. If I complain, I'm being disrespectful to his heritage. If I ask for a dishwasher, I'm spoiled and lazy. It's a trap. A perfectly constructed, culturally coded trap that makes my basic needs look like personal insults. And then there's the silence. You'd think in a house with just two people there would be conversation. But our conversations are mostly monologues of his grievances. When the sun goes down and the tactical thrillers start, the house fills with the sounds of gunfire and shouting from the TV. It's the only time he seems energized. Watching men in tactical gear kick down doors and take control, I sit on the other end of the couch, tucked into a corner, trying to make myself as small as possible. I've tried to share things I love with him. I remember trying to show him an anime I really liked, a beautiful Ghibli-style story about growth and nature. I thought maybe, if he saw the beauty I saw, he'd understand why I need to be outside. He watched 5 minutes of it, scoffed, and said, "This is for children. Why do you watch this garbage?" Then he switched it back to a movie about a CIA hitman. That's the thing. He doesn't just disagree with my tastes. He devalues them. My movies are garbage. My hobbies are for depressed grandmas. My clothes make me look fat or dead. It's a total war on my identity. He's not just trying to be the head of the household. He's trying to be the architect of my entire reality. I think about the car. That car was supposed to be my silver bullet. I remember the day he brought it home. I actually felt a spark of hope. I thought, finally, I can go to the store. I can go to the library. I can go to a park and just sit under a tree. But I don't have the keys. I don't have the license. And in this area, without those things, you might as well be on the moon. He knows that. He knows that every time he says, "Maybe tomorrow," or "You look too tired to go out," he's reinforcing my dependence on him. He's the gatekeeper of the outside world. And he prefers me inside, in the dark, where I'm easier to manage, where there are no witnesses to the way he speaks to me, where I'm just a domestic appliance that occasionally needs to be corrected on how to chop an onion. Last week, my PCOS was at its absolute worst. I woke up and the world was spinning. The pain was a hot iron pressed against my spine. I tried to get out of bed to start the laundry, because God forbid the basket gets full, and I literally collapsed back onto the mattress. I was shaking. I was sweating through my pajamas. He came into the room, dressed for the day, looking fresh and capable. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't touch my forehead. He just looked at the laundry basket, then looked at me, and let out this long, theatrical sigh. "I guess nothing is getting done today," he said. I looked up at him, my eyes blurring with tears, and whispered, "I'm in so much pain. Please, can you just sit with me for a minute?" He didn't even step into the room. He stayed in the doorway checking his watch. "I have things to do. If you're going to stay in bed all day, try not to be so negative when I get back. It's draining. I was draining him because my body was failing me." He walked out, and a few minutes later I heard the car pull out of the driveway. He didn't even bring me a glass of water. I spent the next 6 hours alone, drifting in and out of a pained sleep, hearing the clock ticking on the wall, reminding me of every second of my life that was slipping away in this house. I think that was the day the spark finally went out completely. I realized then that if I were to actually get seriously ill, not just a bad period, but something life-threatening, he wouldn't be the man holding my hand in the hospital. He'd be the man complaining that the hospital food wasn't as good as his mother's cooking, and that my illness was an inconvenience to his schedule. So, I'm back to the original question. Am I overreacting? Is it just marriage to feel like you're a ghost? Is it just culture to be a servant in your own home? Is it just honesty to have the person you love tell you that you look dead in your favourite clothes? I look at the trash can in the hallway. The bags are piling up again. He hasn't taken them out. He says he will, but he won't. And I'm standing here with a dish towel in my hand, looking at the sink full of soapy water, and I realise that the garbage isn't just in the hallway. The garbage is this entire situation. The garbage is the way I've allowed myself to be treated. I'm 26. I should be at the peak of my life. I should be laughing. I should be wearing emerald green dresses and walking on the beach until my legs ache from the good kind of tired. I should be watching movies that make me cry happy tears, not movies that celebrate violence while I sit in a silent, dark room. I've started to realize that divorce isn't just a legal process. It's a rescue mission. It's me going back into the burning building of my life to save the girl who used to love the sun. And I'm terrified. I'm so scared of what's outside those four walls because he spent 2 years telling me I'm too weak, too depressed, and too dead to survive out there. But then I think about those 2 hours on the beach today, walking alone. The wind was cold, but it felt like the first real thing I'd felt in years. I wasn't a grandma. I wasn't dead. I was a woman walking on the earth, and for a few beautiful minutes, I didn't care what he thought about my shoes. If I stay, I know exactly what the next 40 years look like. More dishes, more honesty, more tactical thrillers, more sitting in a car at night staring at a dashboard. If I leave, I don't know what happens. And for the first time in my life, I don't know sounds a whole lot better than I know exactly how miserable I'll be. The most dangerous thing he's done isn't the shouting or the honesty about my appearance. It's the way he's made me doubt my own sanity. For months now, I've been living in a state of constant self-correction. Before I speak, I run my words through a filter. Will this make him angry? Does this sound too depressed? Am I asking for too much? Before I move, I check the rules. Is the sink clear? Did I use the right knife? Am I standing too close to him? I've become a ghost in my own mind, haunting the edges of my own life because the center of it is occupied by his moods and his demands. I've started to look at other couples when we're out on those rare, silent night drives. I'll see a man at a gas station buying a chocolate bar for his wife, or a couple laughing in the glow of a storefront window, and I feel like I'm looking at a different species. Is that what it's supposed to be like? Are people actually allowed to just be happy, without a list of chores hanging over their heads, without their physical pain being treated like a personal insult? I remember a few weeks ago I tried a little experiment. It wasn't something I planned. It was just a moment of desperation. I had been feeling particularly low, that heavy, soul-deep sadness that makes your limbs feel like they're made of stone. He was sitting on the couch, watching another movie about special forces, and I sat down next to him. I didn't say anything at first. I just leaned my head on his shoulder. It was such a small, basic gesture of intimacy. He didn't move. He didn't put his arm around me. He didn't even look away from the screen. After a minute, he shifted his shoulder, effectively shrugging me off, and said, "You're being very clingy today. Don't you have something to do?" I went to the kitchen and started washing a single spoon. That's what my life has become. If I seek comfort, I'm clingy. If I seek rest, I'm lazy. If I seek the sun, I'm a depressed grandma. Every path leads back to the sink, back to the chores, back to the safety of being a silent, invisible servant. And then there's the issue of my driver's license. I didn't mention this before, but I've been trying to get it. I want that independence so badly I can taste it. But every time I bring up practicing or taking the test, he has a reason why it's not a good idea. The traffic is too dangerous right now. The car is acting up. You're too stressed. You'll fail. He's not just a gatekeeper. He's an architect of my helplessness. He wants me to believe that I'm incapable of navigating the world without him, even as he makes the world inside our home a place I desperately need to escape. I think about the clothes again. It sounds so shallow to cry over a dress, doesn't it? But that emerald green dress was a symbol. It was a piece of the version of me that existed before him, the version that wasn't dead, the version that wasn't fat, the version that was worthy of being seen. By making me hate that dress, he wasn't just critiquing my fashion, he was colonizing my memories. He was telling me that even the old me wasn't good enough. The worst part is that I actually started to agree with him. I'd look at the dress and think, maybe he's right. Maybe I do look sickly in this colour. That's how the poison works. It starts with him saying it, and it ends with me thinking it. And once you start thinking his thoughts, you've already lost. I've been reading back through my own thoughts, trying to see them as if they belong to someone else. If a friend told me this story, if a sister told me that her husband wouldn't even heat up a heating pad for her when she was sobbing in pain, what would I say to her? I'd be horrified. I'd tell her to pack her bags and never look back. I'd tell her that love doesn't look like a sink full of dishes and a heart full of dread. So why is it so much harder when it's me? Is it because of the 2 years we've spent together? Is it because of the good moments, the rare times he cooks a meal without complaining, or the 5 minutes of peace we have before the honesty starts? We're taught to fight for our marriages. We're told that for better or for worse includes the hard times. But is this worse? Or is this just bad? Is there a difference? I feel like I'm standing in a room where the ceiling is slowly, inch by inch, lowering. I can still stand up straight for now, but I have to duck my head. Soon I'll be on my knees, and eventually I'll be flat on the floor, and the ceiling will still be coming down. He's the one turning the crank, and he's telling me the whole time that it's for my own good, that he's just being honest about the height of the room. I looked at the trash can tonight, and I realised something. The garbage he refuses to take out? It's a metaphor for everything he's ignored in our marriage. The rotting emotions, the piled-up resentment, the smell of a relationship that died a long time ago, but is still sitting in the hallway because he insists he'll handle it and won't let me do it myself. He wants the image of being a husband without the responsibility of actually being one. He wants the prestige of a traditional wife without the effort of providing the love and security that a traditional home is supposed to be built on. He's a consumer of my life. He's eating my youth, my joy, and my health, and then complaining that I don't taste quite right. I'm starting to realize that the outside perspective I was looking for isn't just about whether I'm justified in wanting a divorce. It's about whether I'm justified in wanting to survive. Because that's what this has become. This isn't a difficult patch in a marriage. This is a slow-motion disappearance act. If I stay, will I even have a name in 10 years? Or will I just be the woman who washes the dishes? Will I ever see the beach during the day again? Will I ever wear a colour I love without hearing a voice in my head telling me I look dead? I looked at him tonight while he was sleeping. He looked so peaceful, so completely unburdened. He isn't losing sleep over the honesty he dealt out today. He isn't wondering if he's unfair. He's perfectly content because the world is exactly the way he wants it to be. I'm in the house, the dishes are clean, and he's the one with the keys. But I'm awake. I'm wide awake, and for the first time in 2 years, I'm not just thinking about how to make him happy. I'm thinking about how to make me exist again. I'm thinking about the emerald green dress and how I'm going to buy a new one, a brighter one that screams that I'm alive. What if I told you that the hardest part of leaving isn't the packing? It's not the legal fees, and it's not the awkward conversations with family. The hardest part is the moment you realize you've been participating in your own disappearance. I spent 2 years helping him erase me. I held the eraser while he pointed out the parts of my personality that were too much or not enough. I scrubbed the dishes, I watched the SWAT movies, and I threw away the emerald dress. I was an accomplice to the theft of my own soul. I keep going back to that outside perspective I asked for. I wanted someone to look at my life and tell me, yes, this is objectively bad. You have permission to be unhappy. I felt like I needed a jury to deliberate on whether my husband's refusal to heat up a heating pad was a divorceable offence. I wanted a judge to rule on whether calling me a depressed grandma was cruel enough to warrant ending a marriage. I was looking for a benchmark, a line in the sand that says, this is where the abuse starts. But that's the trick, isn't it? There is no single big thing. It's 1,000 paper cuts. It's the slow, steady drip of water that eventually carves a canyon through a rock. It's the way he looks at his phone while I'm crying. It's the way he sighs when the trash bags, the ones he insists on handling, start to smell. It's the way he makes me feel like a guest in my own home, someone who has to earn her keep by perfectly replicating a culture that isn't hers, all while being told she's failing. I think about his mother. He talks about her like she's a saint of the kitchen, a woman who never tired, never complained, and never needed a dishwasher. But I wonder, did anyone ever ask her what she wanted? Did she ever want to walk on the beach in the sunlight? Did she have an emerald dress that she loved, only to have some man tell her it made her look dead? Or did she just learn to kill those parts of herself so early on that by the time he knew her, there was nothing left but the cooking and the cleaning? He's trying to mold me into a memory of a woman who probably didn't even exist. He's not in love with me. He's in love with a domestic ideal, a silent, efficient ghost who provides comfort without ever needing any in return. And because I'm a human being with PCOS, with moods, with a love for fantasy and sunlight, I am a malfunction in his perfect system. The isolation is the most effective tool he has. Living out here, without a license, without public transport, it's like living on an island where he controls the only boat. Last week, I spent 4 days without speaking to anyone but him. 4 days where the only feedback I got on my existence was his honesty. By the 4th day, I was looking at myself in the mirror and seeing exactly what he saw. A tired, pale, dead-looking woman who couldn't even chop an onion right. I've realised that he doesn't want me to get my licence. He says it's because he's worried about my stress levels. But the truth is, a car is a getaway vehicle. A car means I can go to the beach whenever I want. A car means I can go to a movie theatre and watch a romantic comedy without him rolling his eyes. A car means I can go to a store and buy a dress in every shade of green there is, and he won't be there to tell me I look fat in them. And then there's the physical reality of our marriage. I mentioned the pressure during my period, but I didn't mention the way it makes me feel afterward. Like I'm hollow. Like I've been used. There is no aftercare in this house. There are no cuddles, no thank you for doing that when you were in pain. There's just the back of his head as he turns over to go to sleep, satisfied, while I lie there in the dark, feeling the familiar throb of my PCOS and the much deeper ache of a heart that is being systematically broken. I'm 26. When I say that out loud, it feels like a lie. I feel 50. I feel 80. I feel like that depressed grandma he's so fond of talking about. But then I realise, if I stay, I'm never going to get to be 26. I'm just going to skip straight to the end. I'm going to spend my youth in this darkened living room, bathed in the light of movies about men who solve problems with guns, while I solve my problems with a dish sponge and a silent prayer for the day to end. I'm starting to see the honesty for what it really is. A weapon. He doesn't tell me I look fat because he cares about my health. He tells me I look fat so I won't feel confident enough to leave. He doesn't tell me the colour yellow makes me look dead because he's a fashion expert. He tells me that so I'll stop trying to be bright. He wants me grey. He wants me dull. He wants me to be a background character in the movie of his life. But here's the thing about background characters. Sometimes they walk off the set. Sometimes they realise they're in the wrong movie entirely. I sat in the kitchen tonight after he'd gone to bed. I didn't wash the dishes. For the first time in 2 years, I just let them sit there. I sat at the table in the dark, listening to the silence of this house, and I tried to remember the last time I felt genuinely happy. Not fine, not managing, but happy. It was 3 years ago. I was with my friends, wearing that emerald dress. We were at a park, and the sun was so bright it made everything look like it was glowing. We were laughing about something stupid, I don't even remember what, but I remember the feeling of the air on my skin. I remember feeling like the world was huge and I was a part of it. I realized tonight that the girl in the emerald dress isn't dead. She's just been hiding. She's been waiting for me to stop scrubbing the plates long enough to notice she's still there. She's been waiting for me to realize that justified is a word for courtrooms, not for hearts. You don't need a justified reason to leave a life that is killing you. You just need to want to live. I looked at the car keys sitting on the counter. He thinks he's the only one who can use them. He thinks he's the only one who has a right to the world outside. But I'm looking at the door, and for the first time, I'm not seeing a barrier. I'm seeing an exit. I'm terrified of what comes next. I'm terrified of the honesty he'll unleash when he realizes he's losing his audience. I'm terrified of being alone in a world I haven't been a part of for 2 years. But more than anything, I'm terrified of staying. I'm terrified of waking up in 10 years and realizing I've thrown away my entire life just to make sure the onions were chopped exactly the way he wanted. I spent hours on that Reddit thread, reading through the comments from strangers. I went there looking for a reality check, half expecting people to tell me I was being a spoiled wife or that I needed to communicate better. I was so conditioned to believe that my feelings were just symptoms of my own inadequacy that I actually asked a group of total strangers to call me out if I was being unfair. Think about that for a second. I was being treated like a live-in servant, denied basic medical empathy, pressured into intimacy while in physical agony, and mocked for wanting to see the sun. And I was still worried that I was the one being unfair. That's what gaslighting does to you. It doesn't just make you doubt the truth, it makes you apologize for it. I remember one specific afternoon, months ago. It was a rare day when he wasn't home, and the house was actually quiet. I was sitting on the floor of the hallway, right next to those damn trash bags that had been sitting there for 3 days. I just stared at them. I thought about how easy it would be to just pick them up, walk them out to the bin, and be done with it. But I didn't. I was paralyzed. I was so afraid of the talk that would follow, the lecture about how he insisted on doing it, the subtle implication that I was overstepping his manly duties, the inevitable shift where my helpfulness would be framed as an attack on his character. I realized then that I wasn't just staying in the house. I was staying in a cage of rules that changed every single day. One day, he's a traditional provider who doesn't want his wife toiling with the trash. The next, he's a suffering martyr because I can't cook a foreign dish as well as a woman who spent 50 years perfecting it. He picks and chooses which parts of tradition benefit him in the moment, and I'm the one who has to navigate the wreckage. I started thinking about the driver's license again. It's the ultimate symbol of my captivity. I'm 26 and I've lived in this country for years, yet I'm as dependent as a child. He's always too busy to help me practice. He's always too tired to take me to the DMV. He's created a world where my only window to the outside is the passenger seat of his car, usually under the cover of darkness. Have you ever spent months only seeing the world at night? It does something to your brain. You start to feel like the daytime world, the one with people working, children playing, and the sun casting long shadows, is a dream. You start to feel like you belong to the shadows. When we go on those night drives, I look at the streetlights passing by, and I feel like I'm underwater. I see the world through glass, but I can't touch it. I can't participate in it. I'm just a ghost he takes for a ride when he feels like he's done enough for the week. And then there was the beach. That walk. He thinks he won that day. He thinks that by calling me a depressed grandma and sitting in the car with his phone, he successfully diminished the experience for me. But he's wrong. While I was walking along that shoreline, I saw a woman. She was older, maybe in her 60s, and she was walking a small, scruffy dog. She looked so happy. She was wearing a bright purple windbreaker, and she was laughing as the dog tried to chase a seagull. I watched her for a long time. I thought, if that's what a depressed grandma looks like, then I want to be one. She had more life in her pinky finger than my husband has in his entire body. She had freedom. She had a purple jacket she clearly loved. She had the sun on her face, and she wasn't waiting for anyone's permission to breathe the salt air. I realized that he's not trying to help me or be honest with me. He's trying to kill the parts of me that he can't control. He can't control my love for the sun, so he calls it depressing. He can't control my taste in movies, so he calls it garbage. He can't control my natural beauty, so he tells me I look dead or fat. He's a small man trying to make me smaller so he can feel big. I went back to the kitchen tonight. He was already in bed, probably dreaming about SWAT teams and tactical maneuvers. I looked at the sink. It was full of the plates from the meal he suffered to cook, the meal he criticized me for not knowing how to make. I picked up a sponge, and then I put it back down. I walked out of the kitchen. I walked into the bedroom and I looked at the closet. The emerald green dress was gone, but the space where it hung was still there. I realized that I've been filling that space with my own excuses. I've been telling myself that marriage is a compromise, but a compromise requires two people to give something up. What has he given up? He still watches his movies. He still eats his food. He still has his car, his keys, and his honesty. I'm the only one who has surrendered. I've surrendered my clothes, my hobbies, my health, and my dignity. I felt a coldness settle over me then. Not the dead kind of cold he talks about, but a sharp, icy clarity. I thought about my PCOS. I thought about the next time the pain comes, and it will come. I thought about lying on that couch, shivering and hurting, and watching him walk past me to check the laundry. I asked myself, is this the man you want to grow old with? Is this the man you want by your side when life gets truly hard? The answer was so loud it felt like a physical weight in the room. No, I'm 26 years old. I have so much life left to live. I have so many dresses to wear, dresses in yellow and red and every single shade of green. I have so many miles to walk in the daylight. I have movies to watch that will make me laugh until I cry, and I have books to read that will take me to worlds where women aren't treated like broken appliances. I'm not a depressed grandma. I'm a woman who has been starved of light, and I'm finally realizing that the door isn't locked. It never was. I was just too afraid of the honesty waiting on the other side. I know what I have to do now. The outside perspective I needed wasn't from Reddit. It was from the version of me that still remembers how to smile. It was from the girl in the purple windbreaker on the beach. It was from the ghost of that emerald dress. I'm standing at the edge of the rest of my life. I don't have a driver's license yet, but I have feet, and I can walk. I can walk until I find a bus or a train or a person who looks at me and sees a human being instead of a malfunctioning servant. I'm not overreacting. I'm waking up. If you were in my shoes, would you stay? Would you keep washing the dishes by hand, hoping that one day he'll look at you with kindness instead of critique? Or would you realize that some people only feel powerful when they're pulling the wings off a butterfly? Let me know in the comments what you would do. Have you ever felt like you were disappearing in your own relationship? I want to hear your stories, because for the first time in 2 years, I'm finally ready to listen to someone other than him. And if you want to hear more stories of people finding their strength, make sure to subscribe. I'm leaving the dishes in the sink tonight. Tomorrow, I'm